Okay, today's stuff we're going to be learning is as Ketubot Daf Ayin. Today's stuff is sponsored by Judy Farber in loving memory of her father, Armin Abramson, Herschel Tzvi Shlomo Chaim Ben Dina Sarah, and Pesach on his 5th yahrzeit. He was always amazed by the topics the rabbis discussed and the details they considered. We're going to get started with this last line that we ended with at the very top of our daf. We finished with this. We had the story of Ilfa. We remembered the story of Ilfa and Rabbi Yochanan. And then we saw that there was this case where the father had said, give my sons a shekel, and then they really needed a selah. And then what do? Do we give them a selah, which is double the amount, in order to sustain them? Depends on the language, right? If he said, give them a shekel, then we give them a selah, because he obviously meant give them what they need. If he said, don't give them anything other than a shekel, then it sounds like he's saying, don't give them anything other than a shekel, and we only give them a shekel. And if he had said, when you die, give it, I want my money the money to go to whatever's left, to go to someone else, we also assume he wanted money to be left. And therefore, since he had specified a shekel, we keep it a shekel. And we said this is all Rabbi Meir, right? That Ilfa had said, oh, I know the Mishna. It's our Mishna that corresponds to the halacha. It's Rabbi Meir who said, mitzvah l'keim divrei hamet. Now, I noticed yesterday I was struggling a little with translating, right? Mitzvah l'keim divrei hamet, to do the words of a dead person doesn't speak. And in fact, I noticed that Tosfot pointed something out that was relevant to this. That it really does mean a dead person. What it means is, after someone dies, there's a mitzvah to keep what they say. And Tosfot says, this doesn't only mean when someone's on their deathbed, something they said on their deathbed. This means, afilu, I'm looking at the top Tosfot on the page here, afilu bibari kaimalan hachi. Even a healthy person, it's not just words that a person on their deathbed says. That's a different halacha. And in fact, Tosfot asks, how does this work in with that halacha? And it raises a whole question. If you have the Koran, there's a really good footnote about it, the way they bring all sorts of answers. But I'll just kind of raise the question, which is, or first explain what this means. Basically, Tosfot points out here that we're distinguishing divrei shchiv meira, which is the person on their deathbed, anything they say, kiktuvim u'misurim dami. Even if they didn't do a kinyan, anything they say, it's as if they commanded us to do it. That's one thing. This is, we're commanded to do whatever someone says once they die. That's why it's dead person. It's once they're deceased, then we're commanded to listen to anything they said in their lifetime, which sounds like even if not on their deathbed. So the question is, how do these two things work together? So I'll give you the first answer that Rabbanit says here in Tosfot, and then I'll leave you to, if you have the Koran, you can read the footnote there with a lot of other suggestions, or you can research it otherwise. But anyway, it says here, at the 5th line of Tosfot, 6th line now, it's only a mitzvah if he designates someone, like in our Mishna. In our Mishna, if you remember, he designated someone to be in charge of taking the money and buying her a field with it. That's different. If someone in their lifetime went so far before they were even dead, but before they were even, sick on their deathbed, to set up a person to do something, when they die, our mitzvah is to make sure that happens, right? It's an interesting concept. It's basically, it's this idea that somebody wanted something to happen and we have to ensure to make it happen. That's different than because there, first of all, they're on their deathbed. We don't have expectations they're going to start doing kinyanim and pick up a handkerchief and show I really mean this, right? There we assume, right? And we also don't want to get them more worked up, right? That they have to do all sorts of things. So we make it as easy as possible so that they don't get worked up and die quicker maybe. So those are two very different issues going on here. So it's an interesting, something interesting that I wanted to point out. Okay, moving on now. Despite the fact that Ilfa brought this halacha from Rabbi Meir and they quoted this halacha, Amar Rav Chisda Amar Mar Ukva, Hilchita, the halacha is, Ben she'amar tnu, Ben she'amar al titnu. It doesn't matter what language he used. Give them a shekel, or don't give them anything more than a shekel, right? Or only a shekel. No, right? He didn't say any more. I shouldn't say that, but don't give them but a shekel. No matter what, these sons get whatever they need for sustenance. So if the price is now selah, double the price, they get double the price from the estate. To which the Gemara says, I don't get it. Didn't we just say that we have to do whatever he said? Now that he's deceased, we have to fulfill his word. To which the Gemara answers, okay, so now they say that's all other things, okay? But meaning this case is different from all other cases. Why? Again, trying to get ourselves into the head of this father. What was he thinking, right? This is all really our getting us prepared for what's to come next, which is Masechet Nedarim. Wait till we start the next chapter, which starts with a neder, a vow, which we're going to start in 2 minutes. But the idea here is, what was he thinking when he said those words? What did his words mean? So until now, we thought, it meant don't give them but a shekel. He meant I'm really serious, only a shekel. But no, the Gemara now understands it differently. That's Rav Huna in the name of Mar Ukva. Aval baha menach nichale. He clearly, any father wants their sons when they die to have enough money for food. So obviously, if food now costs a selah, he obviously meant to give them a selah. So why did he say only give them a shekel? Had amar hachi, the fact he said that, lizar zinhu hudata, lizeruzinhu. He wanted them to be careful with their money. He didn't want them to spend all his money very quickly. So he limited them by saying, I'm limiting how much you can get to make them be careful with spending their money. But he didn't really mean don't give them enough for what they need, for basic food needs. Now we're going to quote a Mishna in Masechet Gittin, Daf Nun Tet. Interesting Mishna, and doesn't seem fully connected, but we're going to soon learn that there's some halacha that we're going to learn from that, and then they're going to say it's actually derived from our Mishna. Tnan Hatam. Tnan Hatam means we're quoting a Mishna from there. The Mishna there says, Ha-pi'utot mikram mekach umimkaram mimka bimitaltalim. When it comes to movable property, young children, we're going to see what age children are. Children, we're not going to really see it, but I'll tell you in Gittin, they have a whole discussion. What does this mean? But even minors, their sale is a good sale, okay? And if they buy something, they acquire something, it's all valid. What do you mean? Didn't we say you have to be a gadol, gadolah? How does this work? So the Gemara there assumes they try to establish at what age. They say at an age where a child can distinguish between, they can understand the concept of buying and selling, which happens before the age of 12 or 13. Then already if they sell something, right? I always think of like kids trading baseball cards, like does that work? Or in my day it was baseball cards. I don't even know what they do now. But, for my kids, it was like Pokemon things and I don't know what. But, is that valid? Did they understand, right? They always have that thing. They took my cards, like they don't understand this idea of loss that, you gave it to, you traded it fair and square. So when you get to a certain age where you understand that concept, then already a sale of yours is a sale and a buying is a buying. With movable property, not with land. Amar Rafram, here comes the thing we're going to derive from our Mishna. Rafram says, Lo shanu ela she'en shama betrothus. That's if, let's say we're talking about an orphan who has possessions, right? Usually you don't have possessions unless you're an orphan. So the orphan has possessions and they sell them. But what if there's an betrothus? What if the father put a trustee? Okay. So if there's no trustee, father didn't appoint an betrothus, then the children's sale is good. But if there was someone who was appointed to handle the estate in place of the children, the father set this up, then no, that doesn't work. Okay. Meaning the father set up an betrothus to be in charge of, and then therefore any sale they make is not valid because the father intended that someone else would handle the money until they became of age. Mimai, where do we get this from? From our Mishnah. Mi de katane ein ma'asek tana klum. Because what did it say in our Mishnah? Now, what happened in our Mishnah? The father appointed someone to buy this shalish, this third person, to take the money and buy land. And at the end of the Mishnah, we said, the only case where we will allow, right? There was a whole debate whether this was right. There was a discussion whether it's Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Meir. In any case, we ended up saying it's Rabbi Meir, but Rabbi Meir basically says, Ein ma'asek tana klum. She has no way, right? Her actions are invalid. And here's a case where there's someone in charge. So therefore, they derive it from our Mishnah. Right now, the Gemara is going to try to distinguish and say, our Mishnah is not exactly an betrothus situation. Dilma hechadika shalish shani. In our Mishnah, it's different than an betrothus. Betrothus means that when the father died, The father said before the father died, I want someone to be in charge, right? I'm appointing a trustee to be in charge of the money. He didn't say, I want this apotropos to use this money to buy that and this money to go buy a field for this kid. And this, it wasn't that specific. In our Mishna, when it says, it was a case where the father specifically commanded somebody to buy with this money a land for the daughter. He didn't say what kind of land, but he was very specific about the job. That's why we would say she has no rights here, okay, as a ketana. But that might not be true if he appoints a trustee in general over the property of the orphans, to which case the Gemara is going to answer no. If they wanted to distinguish, what would our Mishna have said? They're now going to infer this specifically from the wording of the Mishna. In Cain, if you were right, if there's a difference between a shalish case and a regular apotropos case, Litnei, our Mishna should have used the wording, quote unquote, aval biktana ya'aseh shalish mashu slash biyado. If that's what they wanted to teach, they would have said, but with a minor, the shalish has to do what the father commanded, and basically the daughter has no rights. But but instead, the Mishnah chose a very general language. The actions of a minor are nothing. Now, we know they're not nothing because the Mishnah in Gittin says they are something. So we have to find some middle ground. So we're going to say it's not the extreme of saying only when there's a shalish who has a specific job. And it's not the other extreme when we're going to assume there's nobody, but it's when the father appointed an apotropos, then and obviously when there's a shalish with a very specific purpose. Therefore, we can infer even in general. And with that, and we will now start the 7th chapter. Okay. Chapter 7 starts off with somebody takes a vow that his wife not benefit from him. Okay, usually this includes eating, it includes sexual relations. Okay, there's a big machloket Rashi Tosfot here. I'm leaving that to Gefet. Gefet this week is going to deal with that. It should be up hopefully later today about this big machloket, about what happens and how does this correspond with the Mishnah about someone who's madir tashmish from his wife. And our discussion is going to focus specifically on the food issue. So, and you'll see right away why there's a difference between them, because in the food issue, okay, so now what's the issue? He takes a vow that my wife will not be able to benefit from me. That means he can't provide her with food. Well, if that's the case, what are we supposed to do? He has a responsibility to provide her with food. So ad shloshim yom, we're going to distinguish between a vow that was for up to 30 days or a vow that was longer than 30 days. There's different ways to understand this. Does it mean the language of his vow included up to 30 days, right? Was up to, or it was for longer? Or is it just after 30 days passes? Okay, the 30 days will just be too long. Anyway, for 30 days, he could ya'amid parnas. He can put someone else in charge. This is why, obviously, in terms of sexual relations, it's not an option to put someone else in charge. But he can basically put someone else in charge. Now, we already have a lot of questions on this first line of the Mishnah. Okay, forget about the rest of the Mishnah. We're going to have a lot of questions as well. The main questions for today, because the later part of the Mishnah we're only going to deal with on the next daf. But and I should say, by the way, we're already in the 7th chapter. We're getting to Daf Ayin Bet, which is all about covering, hair covering. So that's also, we're getting to a very interesting Mishnah coming up. So now we're going to say like this. Number one, how can you take a neder not to provide something that you're obligated to provide to your wife? Should be an invalid vow. That's number one. Number two, if you're not allowed because the vow, let's assume for whatever reason, the vow is valid, which we're going to have 3 explanations, and it's going to take most of our daf to figure out 3 possibilities as to how to understand this Mishnah and why this vow is a valid vow. But assuming it's a valid vow, how can you put a parnas in charge? A parnas is basically a shaliach. Now, what do we know in laws of shlichut? If I appoint someone to do something for me, a shaliach is a messenger, right? I appoint someone to do something for me. We say shlucho shel adam kimoto. They basically can function as me. Now, if the husband appoints someone to feed his wife in place of him, the shaliach is operating as his shaliach, which means it's as if the husband is giving food to the wife, and he vowed that she won't be able to get any benefit from him, and she's obviously benefiting from him. So we're going to have to explain that as well. Okay, that's going to basically be the majority of our daf for today. So if it's for 30 days, he can put someone else in charge, and that's fine. However, yeter miken, after that, meaning either if 30 days passed and it's still we're in this situation, or he made a vow for longer than 30 days, he said for 2 months, then Yotzivi ten Ketubah. Then he has to divorce her, and she obviously gets her Ketubah money because he reneges on the deal and not she. Right? There's many cases we're going to see coming up where she loses her rights to the Ketubah. He can divorce her, and he doesn't have to give her the Ketubah because she basically did a breach of contract. In this case, it's him. Rabbi Yehuda Omer. Rabbi Yehuda disagrees. We're going to see. He disagrees with the first 2 cases of our Mishnah. Rabbi Yossi is going to disagree with the third. Rabbi Yehuda Omer. He distinguishes between a Yisrael and a Kohen. What's the main difference? A Yisrael, if he divorces his wife, he can always remarry her as long as she didn't marry someone else in the interim. Just read that in this week's parsha. But this past week. But what's the problem? If it's a Kohen, we have an issue. Kohen can't be Bachzir Grushato. Once she's divorced, he can't remarry her. So therefore, a Kohen who does this kind of thing is going to get a little bit longer because we want to give him more time. Basic issue of the time, at least right now, although we'll see in the Gemara, they're going to say different explanations of the time. Seems like we want to give him time to change his mind about it, at least possibly. So Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Yisrael, because what he can always get out of a vow. Remember, you could do hatarat nedarim. You can go and say, oh, had I realized this, I never would have made the vow. You come up with some issue of regret. And then, right, apropos for the whole idea of tshuva that we're thinking about now. Anyway, you can say, I made a mistake and undo the vow. Right? We do it out of Rosh Hashanah. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Yisrael, chodesh echad yikayem, u'shnayim yotzi v'yiten ketubah. So Yisrael, if it's 1 month, yes, he can stay married, but if it's 2 months, then no. Kohen, but when it comes to a Kohen, shnayim yikayem, he gets 2 months to stay married. Only after 3, u'shlosha yotzi v'yiten ketubah. Case number 2. If he says to her, you can't eat a certain type of fruit, it's a very strange neder. And why this is so serious, it's a good question. The Gemara is going to get into it later, so we'll wait. He takes a vow that she can't eat any type of fruit, like no types of apples. Okay? Yotzivi take tuba. He has to divorce her. Sounds like right away even. Rabbi Yehuda Omer. Rashi, by the way, says he can't really even do such a thing. So it must be because there's no way for him to forbid someone else to eat something that has nothing to do with him, right? Her eating fruits has nothing to do with him. So Rashi claims it's talking about a case where she took the neder and he accepted it, right? Because a husband can annul her vow. So that she took the vow and he accepted it, and because he accepted it, he's responsible. Just a bit of a strange interpretation because you would say she's really at fault. And if you remember, we saw this whole thing, right? When she takes a vow and he doesn't annul it, who's the one who really is responsible? We saw, right? Is it etzba, right? There was a whole thing about it was her, right? It was his thing that did it, or it was her, right? Because he can invalidate it and he did, and he can annul it and didn't. It's his fault. Or is it her fault because she took it? Anyway, Rashi claims that that's what's going on here. Not everybody agrees with it. In any case, Rabbi Yehuda again disagrees and says same idea, same concept, but he says it differently, right? Different amounts as last time. B'Yisrael yom echad yikayim. He gets 1 day because Yisrael. Shnayim yotzi v'yiten ketubah. After that, 2 days doesn't work. B'Kohen shnayim yikayim u'shlosha yotzi v'yiten ketubah. So same thing, 1, 2, but there it was months. Here it's days. If he takes a vow that she can't, by the way, one of the main differences, if you notice here, is the first case, she can't benefit from him, but he could put someone else in charge. This is forbidding her to all apples. She can't eat any apple in the world. Okay, that's why it seems to be a little stricter. Anyway, the next is she can't wear a certain type of jewelry. Okay, later in the Gemara, we'll suggest maybe it's bisamim. She can't put on deodorant or perfume. Okay, forbids that to her in general. Here's going to be an interesting distinction according to Rabbi Yossi. So the Tanna Kama says already yotzi v'yiten ketubah. You can't force a woman to not put on jewelry or a certain type of jewelry or perfume. Rabbi Yossi Omer, depends whether you're rich or poor, which is very interesting. But aniyot, if you're poor, shalom natan kitzba. Only if he didn't put a limit. If he put a limit on it, then it's fine because poor women can live without these things for a certain period of time. Doesn't even say what kind of limit. Sounds like any limit. At least she knows at some point it will be off of her. But ba'ashirot, but wealthy women who wear jewelry all the time or perfume, deodorant, shloshim yom, 30 days, that's all she gets, and then he has to divorce her. Okay, that's all he gets, really. Okay, next, now we're going to start with the Gemara, and we're going to ask our basic question that I mentioned before. Since he's obligated to provide her with food, how on earth can he take this neder and say, you're not going to benefit from me at all? Can he, using a vow, get rid of a responsibility he has to his wife? And not only is this clearly an issue, but logically it makes sense. But we're going to show you a source that we've already seen, a Mishna. Mishna says, Konam she'eni oseh leficha. Remember, he gives her mizonot and she gives him her salary. If she says, Konam she'eni oseh leficha, I vow that anything that I make, meaning my salary, will not be permitted to you. What did the Tanakama there say? If there was a three-way machloket, but we'll see why the other two opinions aren't brought here at all. For good reason, eino tzarich lahafer. This neder is invalid because he doesn't even need to annul the neder because the neder doesn't work because she has a responsibility to give her salary to her husband. So she's basically taking a neder on something that's already his. It's not even hers to talk about. Likewise, the mizonot aren't even his to say, I'm not giving them to you. They're hers. They have her name on them. Okay? So, first of all, what were the other opinions? The other opinion said, well, I'll just give you one of them as an example. In the event of divorce, her maseh adayim will be hers, and that way it could theoretically apply, right? But for later. But certainly right now, when she's obligated to give him the salary, right now, right, the neder isn't valid. And likewise, he's obligated to give her food. His neder shouldn't be valid. And also just assuming we hold like Tanakama here, even if you might say, the other opinions. So Alma, therefore, conclusion from this is, and this is going to be our big question, since she already has a lien on the food, basically, it's supposed to be given to her, it's got her name on it. He can't say, I'm not giving it to you. Hachanami, right? So, sorry, just like I read it wrong. Since she has to give him her salary, in the case of the konam, she doesn't have the power to basically take that out of her hands, so her neder is not valid. Hachanami, we should say the same thing here. Since he is indebted to her, the mizono lav kol kamine denaf kalal shiabude. He can't undo this shibud by making a vow. So that's our big question. So answer number one, and each answer we're going to have a lot of questions on. It's going to be a long-winded discussion with a lot of details. And I'll just give you the structure. 3 answers. The third one we're going to reject and then go back and say it's obviously 1 or 2. Since he's allowed to say to her, keep your salary and I won't feed you, you can feed yourself. He theoretically could say that to her. Remember, she could say, Eini nizon of eini osa, right? Don't feed me and I'm not going to give you my salary. He can also say, don't give me your salary and I won't feed you. Okay? And then you feed yourself with your salary. Since he can say that, na'aseh ke'omer, when he says, I vow that you will not benefit from me, turning out I'm a bet, it's as if, okay, we're going to change this soon, but right now we're going to say it's as if, it's as if he's saying to her, you can't benefit from me, so keep your salary and feed yourself. Okay? That's what it's as if. So therefore, he can't take the vow, because theoretically, since he's allowed to say it, keep your salary and feed yourself. Therefore, in this case, when he took a vow, you will not benefit from me, what he was basically saying is, keep your salary and feed yourself. Now, the Gemara is going to ask a question. Okay, so im'ita lahad Rav Huna amarav, if we hold by what Rav Huna says in the name of Rav, which we're going to see in a second, which is, as I mentioned earlier, to Amr Rav Huna amarav, yechola isha shetomar lebala eini nizona ve'eini osa. If Rav Huna says in the name of Rav exactly what I said before, which is, she can also say, don't feed me, I'm keeping my salary. She has the rights to do that. Then let's go back to where we started. So then theoretically, when she does this konam, it's the exact flip case, right? She says, you will not, right? I'm swearing, and the konam is a language of a neder, a vow. I'm vowing that anything I make will be forbidden to you. Why don't we say, it's as if she's saying, Lema, why don't you say, mitoch shechola lomar eini nizona ve'eini osa? And that's the exact same thing we just said in our case. Since she theoretically could say those words, I'm not working for you, don't feed me, and I'm not giving you my salary. Isn't when she says, konam shani osa lepicha, isn't she basically saying, Naaseh kemisha omeret lo, eini nizona ve'eini osa? Right? And she's basically saying, okay, anything I make will be forbidden to you, which means I'm going to keep my salary and don't feed me. In which case, why eno tzarich lafer? If this neder works because it's as if he said those words, then that neder should work because it's as if she said those words. So therefore, we're back to square one. Doesn't work. So this is still the first answer, but I kept it in my mind, it's one answer. We're going to fine tune the answer. Instead of saying that as soon as he says the words as a vow, anything I do will, right, anything of mine is forbidden to you, you will not benefit from me. It's not as if he said the words, keep your salary and I'm not feeding you, because that, right, it's not as if, because then that would mess up the konam case. Ella, lo tema na'aseh, don't say it's as if. Ella, say, be'omerla, it's a case where he said it. This is what we call an ukimta. Before it wasn't an ukimta. Before it was just saying, this case is as if. We're interpreting it in this way. Now we're saying, no. That wouldn't work because then the konam, he should have to get rid of the neder because the neder would be valid and it's not valid because you would say the same by her. What are we talking about here? He said more than just what it says in the Mishna. This is what we say, ukimta. Ukimta means we're going to establish, ukimta from the language of establish, lahakim. We're establishing the Mishnah in a unique case. It's not as simple as it appears. He takes a vow that his wife can't benefit, and he adds the words, okay, here goes, and he says, keep your salary and feed yourself. And that's the vow that would be valid. If he didn't say those words, the vow wouldn't be valid, just like the konam case isn't valid. Because by her, right, it should be no different. What's the problem with this? I told you it's going to be very long-winded because we're going to keep raising issues. If he says to her, I'm not feeding, right? Anything, you can't benefit from me, but keep your salary and feed yourself. What did the Mishnah say? Ad shloshim yomi, I mean parnas. So, ihachi parnas lamala. What does she need a parnas for? She's got her salary to cover her food expenses. She's covered. So, and obviously you'd also have to ask, why does he have to divorce her then? Because he could say those words to her. So it's another question. But because we already asked this question and we're going to get into interpreting it better, you'll see. Bidilo sapka. It must be, it's not enough. In other words, her salary is 50 shekels a week and she needs 75 shekels to live. Okay? It wasn't enough. Bidilo sapka. Wait a minute. If it's not enough, then we're back to square one. Hadar kushin liduchte. If it's, then the vow isn't going to be valid. If she can't afford, you can't say, keep your salary and feed yourself and I'm not responsible if if the woman's salary won't cover her expenses. So we're back to square one now. To which they answer, Amar Rav Ashi, it's where her salary will cover basics, but not luxury items. Okay, in the words of the Gemara, big things and little things. Okay, some people say meat and side dishes, things like that, not sweets like for dessert. Okay, let's just go with that right now. Okay, but whatever it is, it's not right, the extras. To which the Gemara says, okay, wait a minute. What are you talking about? Luxury items. It all depends on, right? Let's say you just say dessert, forget luxury items. Luxury already defines it's luxury, it's not a necessity. So now they're going to say, it really depends on the scenario. And then neither is going to work out. You're going to see. It's going to be a problem. If she's used to eating them, then what are his responsibilities of providing her with food? Whatever she normally eats. So if she normally, every meal you have meat and wine and dessert, well, then he has to provide that. In which case, again, his vow shouldn't be valid because her salary can't cover all that. and he has to give her all that. So he can't basically make a vow that goes against what his responsibilities are. V lo regila bahu, and if she's not used to eating them, she never eats dessert normally when they're married, and he hadn't vowed against her. Parnas lamali, what do you need to bring in a parnas if her salary covers her basics? And her basics were all that she ever got, that she can't all of a sudden demand more money than her basics. Although we're going to see she can, and we're going to say again, unique situation. So we're in a unique situation within a unique situation, right? Ukimta within an ukimta. Lo tzricha. The case is tirigila bebein nasha. In her father's house growing up, every day they had meat, wine, and dessert. V'kamagalgala bahade. Then she got married to this guy who didn't have dessert every night. So she got used to it. Okay, I married this guy. Too bad I don't get dessert every night, but I'll live with it. I'm married to him. I love him. Happy to go with it. To Amrale, but now she can say to him what? Until now, delo adartan, where you didn't make a vow against me. Kilgalina bahadach, I was willing to go with you. Okay, so I didn't get dessert. I was fine. Hashda adartan, but now you got angry at me. And you said, right, because you wouldn't do this unless you were angry. You didn't really want to be with your wife. Now that you're basically pushing me away from you, I'm no longer willing to stoop down to your level and not eat dessert every night. I demand my dessert. Okay, that's what's happening here. In which case, okay, so now we're almost there with the end of this first answer. So let's summarize. Number one, he had to have said to her, keep your salary and I won't feed you, and you feed yourself with your salary. And the salary has to cover her basics, not the extras. What extras? It's the extras that she was used to getting in her father's house. And that explains why his neder is really enough to cover everything. And that's why, in other words, his neder works because she really can feed herself and sustain herself in a normal manner the same way she did the whole time she was married to him. However, she has a claim on him, which is why he has to give her a parnas, which is she claims, now that you're no longer living with me and you don't want to be with me, I demand to go back to what I had in my father's house. So now, you might say, didn't we learn that Yoredimo, right? That she basically, she doesn't go down to his level and he has to provide her, but she must have said it was okay, right? She can be mochel on it. She could say, listen, I know we don't have the money, even though I lived a nice life before, you don't have to give it to me, but she's not willing anymore to forego her rights. Last question on this answer though. Mishna ad 30 yom. So what's this 30 days then? If it's just this extra, so let her have a parnas, right? He'll give her the extra forever, right? What's the difference? She's getting, right? You're allowed to live for a long time where your husband says, keep your salary and feed yourself. So what's the issue? Well, the problem here is if he had just said, keep your salary and make your own, and find your own food, that would be okay. But what did he do? He made a neder that she can't benefit from him. So ad 30 yom lo shame bein nasha. No one's really going to know after 30 days, up to 30 days. Below zilaba milta, and it won't be embarrassing to her. But tfei, once 30 days passes, we all know how rumors get spread, right? People start noticing something's odd with this family. They're not sitting at the table together anymore. They're not this. Shame bein nasha, people are going to start hearing what's going on. Vizilaba milta, it's going to be humiliating to her. Okay, now what's humiliating? Big discussion among the commentaries. Maybe it's humiliating because people are going to know that he made this neder, like he got angry at her, and that's humiliating, right? Which might take people time to figure it out. So over the course of 30 days, maybe it'll be okay. Once 30 days passes, we assume everyone's going to know. Or maybe they'll see that she's not eating at the table with him like all other women eat, and that will be embarrassing to her. Okay? So the weakness with that is that if he tells her, right, that then also they probably won't be eating together, and that actually works. So maybe that's a weakness. And here, maybe it's really more the ned. Okay, so that's the first answer. Very long-winded, but we got to an answer. The next are going to be more simple. Ibai deima, second option. Again in ukimta. He took the neder when she was only betrothed. Now, when you're betrothed, remember, he doesn't have to feed her. So that's why he could take the neder, because it's not obligated in mizonot. But then it's not relevant because he's not obligated in mizonot. So the Gemara says, Arusa mi mizone. If she's only betrothed, she doesn't even get mizonot. So why is he putting up a parnas to give her food? So it must be she gives mamalonisi. They were betrothed. when he took the vow, then it became the date where he was supposed to start paying from them. Remember, once he says, let's get married, and she agrees, they have a year, the clock starts ticking. Year is up, he has to start feeding her. Titnan, as it says in the Mishna, if the time came and they're not yet married, like they already started eating his food, they can even eat truma if she's married to a Kohen. In which case, we have a big question though. We have to explain this. Mishna ad shloshim yom. So what's the 30-day period that he can put a parnas up? Ad shloshim yom avid shalech shlichutei. Tfei avid shalech shlichutei. It's just a technicality. We can assume that for 30 days he can find someone who's willing to be a good guy and take care of her food. But who's going to want to do that for the long term? Even if, we'll see later, even if the husband's paying still, it's a pain in the neck to go shopping, bring her food. Who's going to be willing to do that for him, right? I mean, this is really his responsibility. He's putting it off on somebody else. Someone of their night, they might be willing to do it for a friend, but for how long can you expect your friend to do this for you? Okay, that's option number 2. Option number 3 is I already told you they're going to reject, and it's a bit of a takeoff on option number 2. But it's not that the date came, but niseit. She married him already. Now, she married him knowing about this neder. So that's going to be a bit of an issue. Niseit hasavra b'kibla. That he took the neder when he wasn't obligated. And then they got married. And she seemed to not care, apparently, because, right, savra b'kibla. She accepted this neder upon herself. She knew when she got into the marriage, right, you can only do the marriage willingly. She went ahead and got married anyway, knowing, right, you can't marry a woman against her will, knowing that he took this vow and yet married him anyway. She must have said, I don't care. So the Gemara says, if she said, I don't care, then he's not obligated, right? Not to divorce her and give her a ketubah, not to put up a parnas. She agreed to it. So that doesn't make any sense. To which the Gemara says, Da'amra, she said like this, Kisfura shani yochol lekabel. Achshav, shani yochol lekabel. Achshav ein ani yochol lekabel. I thought I could handle it. I thought I could live without food, and I realized I can't. That's a bit of a crazy statement, and the Gemara is going to say so. In other words, again, I thought I could survive without my husband supporting. Okay, maybe that's what she's saying. And I realized I can't. Now, it doesn't seem to be where, like the first case, where he said, keep your salary. It sounds like she's not keeping her salary. She just thought maybe she didn't really believe him that he would really keep his vow. Maybe she thought he was going to annul it. Whatever. For whatever reason, she thought I can handle it. She realized she can't. So the Gemara says that's a claim a woman can make, but not in this situation of food. That comes up in a famous case where the woman marries a man who has boils all over his body, and she thinks she can live with it, and then she gets married to him and she realizes she can't. There's all sorts of cases where the woman can claim divorce, where the rabbis can issue what we call a chiyuv get. We've talked about this, where the rabbi said, you have to give her a get. If he was a mukat shchin, for example, he had a serious blemish, and she knew it going in, but claims, I thought I would be able to handle it, and I realized I can't, that's grounds for divorce. But that's about mumim. But we don't say that about mizonot, because everybody knows you can't survive without food. There's no way she would have, right? She knew going in what she was getting into, and therefore it's not grounds for divorce. Okay, we can't make a chiyuv get and say this man, she went in knowing, willing, it was her fault. And therefore we reject this third explanation. We go back to the first explanation. So that dealt with our first question, 3 possible answers. Okay, let's just quickly review. One is, it's a case where he said, keep your salary and feed yourself, but it wasn't enough to give her the life she had with her father, which she was willing to accept while they were married, not willing to accept now that he made this vow against her. And that's why we have a parnas. And why the 30 days? Because no one will really know. For within 30 days after that, it will become public and embarrassing to her. Second option was the time came, and she was only engaged at the time. That's why you could say the net vow, because he wasn't obligated at that point. Then the clock started ticking, right? It came 12 months. He was obligated. And right, she hadn't yet agreed to the whole thing because she hadn't got married after that, which is why we rejected option 3. But at that point, basically we allow for 30 days, because for 30 days we can find someone to be there to give her the food. But after that, we're not going to find someone who's going to be nice enough to do that. Now we get to the other question. Isn't the parnas doing the shlichut of the husband? In which case, in the end, she's benefiting from the husband. So Amar Rav Huna be'omel kol hazani no mafsid. It's a case where the guy says anyone who sustains her will not lose out. Meaning, in other words, if you step up to the plate and you sustain this woman, you feed her, I'll pay you back later. I understand. That's still doing what the husband wants. It's still acting in place of the husband, in which case it's as if she's benefiting from the husband and going against the vow. And how do we know this? Because we're going to find where almost the same language is used. It's a little bit different, and that's in the end what we're going to say. But okay, this is very apropos to 9/11, which just was 3 days ago. Someone's in a bore about to die, and he screams out from the pit, right? It's like from, let's say you're on the plane, and you scream out, or the building's collapsing, and you realize you're not going to get out. You say, Kol hashomea kolo yichtov get lishto, right? You send that a WhatsApp group, okay? Anyone who gets this WhatsApp, anyone who sees this, please write a get to my wife. So it sounds like kol hazan eino mafsid. What's the law? Those people write the get for him, meaning they can operate as his agent. This is agency. This is clear. They were operating in place of him. To which they say, no, this is very different. He gave a command, a word that said, write this. He didn't say yazun, support her. He said, anyone who supports her is not mafsid. He didn't say anyone who will go, right? He didn't say the words, go support her. So, kol hazan kama. He said it more general, so that would work. But we're going to find another place where that exact language appears without the command, and yet we're going to see it sounds like it's not allowed. Here we have the language. You have a fire going on in your house. It's Shabbat. It's a kind of fire that you can't put out on Shabbat. There's different laws about it, which kind of fire you can, which you can't. It's not dangerous for anyone for whatever reason, right? Normally, we're going to basically say nowadays, most people say any fire is dangerous, but let's just say this one wasn't. You can say if you're going to lose all, let's say your property, so you can say and hope that a Gentile will hear you. Anyone who puts this out will not lose out, meaning I'll pay you after Shabbos, right? Okay. But it says, so it works, but normally you can't tell a Gentile to do work for you. But bidleika hitiru, specifically because it's a fire we permit it. But otherwise we wouldn't permit it. So bidleika lemute, my lav lemute ki agamna, does it not say, and not in a case like this, where you said your wife can't benefit from you? Lo, lemute shari surim de Shabbat. No, what it's saying is in the realm of Shabbat, where we're very strict about these laws, there this language would work only in a fire, it wouldn't work anywhere else. But it's not talking about other cases outside the realm of Shabbat, and therefore it doesn't go against what we just said. Second question against Rav Huna. Again, Rav Huna was the one who said the wording he used was kol hazani no mafsid. Mativ Rab, hamudahan ami chavero ve'en lo ma yochal. Okay, you and me, we have a relationship, and then you say you can't benefit from me at all. Okay, now, I'm sorry, you say that I can't benefit from you at all. So, now what happens? I have no food. So now you feel bad. So what do? You go to a storekeeper that you know, and you say, it's kind of like the amira la'akum, right? On Shabbat, you say, listen, this person has nothing to eat, and I don't know what to do for him. So the storekeeper gets the point. Hu noten lo, ubav notel mizeh. He pays the guy and gives the guy food. And then eventually the other person, right, you go and you pay the storekeeper so that they can give me the food. But notice they didn't say, you go out in the street and say, kol hazani no mafsid. Must be it doesn't work. So they say, no. Lo mebaya kama. This was a bigger chiddush to go to the storekeeper. Of course you could say kol hazani no mafsid, but you can even go to a storekeeper. Why? Lo mebaya, you didn't even need to say kol hazani no mafsid. That's a very general statement. Of course you could go say that because you're basically speaking to anyone in the world, and whoever jumps in, great, that works. It's indirect enough. Aval hai kevan de ragil etzlo. But if you go to a chavani, a storekeeper that you know, because of a ka'amarle, and then you say to him these words, it's kevan de amarle zil hafle adami. It's as if you're saying to him, go give, right? It's as if you're saying to him, go give Michelle the food. It's as if it's super direct because he knows you and he knows what you're talking about. And therefore, kamash malan that you could even do it in that way. Gufa. Now we want to go into this case a little more, but this will finish for today. We're going to see this whole source. If you didn't have anything to eat after the person was forbidden. Again, this is just repeating exactly what we just saw. Go to the storekeeper. This person can't benefit from me. I don't know what to do. So he gives him, and then he takes the money. The storekeeper gets the money from the person. If he has a house to build and he doesn't have anyone to build it, he has a fence to put up and he can't. He has a field to harvest. In other words, the only person he has is this guy. So the guy goes to Pa'alim Regilim Etzlo. He finds some workers that he's familiar with. This guy can't benefit from me. I don't know what to do for him. There's no one who's willing to help. Those workers go do the job, and then they go get payback from the guy. Two of us are walking in the path, and I have nothing to eat. Well, let's say there are three of us. So the one who I can't benefit from gives to the third guy as a gift, and then then he gives it to me, and I can eat it. If it's just the two of us, he puts it on a rock, or he puts it on a gader, on a fence. He said, this is hefker for anybody who wants. Then he can take it as he wishes. Rabbi Yossi osel. Okay, we're going to have to wait till tomorrow to see where Rabbi Yossi doesn't like this hefker option, because it's basically going to say it's only the two of you, and it's not really real. It's obvious what's going on here. You can't be so obvious about it. Okay, and we'll see from some case. Get to that tomorrow. It's really only one line, but it's all story in that one line. We'll start with that in tomorrow's shiur. And with that, we will end our shiur for today. Have a great day.